In this presentation, I will review the contents of the kit envelopes and the supply kits, as well as the UPS procedures. The last few slides go over what to do when a final harvest needs to be done between work periods and how to handle soybean samples when the units are not mature at the same time. These last few slides might seem a little out of place, but the information is important. You will receive one kit envelope per sample, even if you have more than one sample for someone. For example, 2 corn samples or 1 corn sample and 1 soybean sample. The sample listing that accompanies your assignment will match the kit envelopes. Also, the sample listing will include any existing comments for your respondents. Each kit envelope will have 2 labels attached. One contains all the sample information you need. This includes the crop, sample number, name, address of the respondent, the row and pace count of each unit, whether or not the sample is a gleaning sample, etc. The other label will be helpful to document things like number of end rows, the direction of the main rows, additional farmer information, and items on the Form A. This label is to be used however you see fit. Gleaning samples will have sample numbers that are multiples of 4, 4, 8, 12, 16, etc. Also, gleaning sample will be highlighted on the kit envelope. Each kit envelope will contain the following: the sample-specific Form A, 5 blank Form Bs, and the sample-specific Form E if it is a gleaning sample. So, for example, the kit envelope for corn sample 20 will contain the corn Form A for corn sample 20, 5 blank corn Form Bs, and the Form E for corn sample 20. The kit envelope for corn sample 21 will contain the Form A for corn sample 21, 5 blank corn Form Bs, but it will not contain a Form E since sample 21 is not a gleaning sample. Each corn kit envelope contains 6 blank corn ID cards, and each soybean kit envelope contains 5 blank soybean ID cards. ID cards are used each time a sample is sent to the lab in St. Louis. This includes final pre-harvest samples for both crops, gleaning samples for both crops, and dent samples for corn. All Form A's and all Form B's will be submitted on CAPI. This includes good samples, lost samples, and refusals. So, no UPS labels addressed to the Michigan office will be provided. However, you will receive UPS labels addressed to the NOD in St. Louis to use to send harvested samples to the lab. There is no CAPI instrument for the Form E. The Form E is sent to the lab at the NOD along with the gleaning sample. For lost samples and refusals, please return the Form E to the kit envelope. The office will account for the Form E for lost samples and refusals based on the status code used on the Form A. The one exception to this is for gleaning samples where the field work was completed, so the status code on the Form A is 1, but the gleaning sample was lost. This usually happens when the farmer tills the field prior to the enumerator being able to complete the gleaning. In this case, please inform your supervisor of the situation. Along with the kit envelopes, your assignment includes supply kits. You will receive 1 supply kit for each sample you have. You will also receive an additional gleaning supply kit for each sample that is a gleaning. Remember that gleaning samples are multiples of 4. These supply kits contain the necessary materials to lay out the units, such as Tyvek envelopes, paper bags, florist stakes, plant tags, etc. The supply kits are not sample specific. The supply kits will have a small label on them that indicates what is inside. Each time a sample, for example a final pre-harvest, dent, or gleaning, is sent to the lab, please document the UPS tracking number. Please see the area on the Form B to do this. Also, you can write it on the kit envelope. Filling out the ID cards correctly is extremely important. Please review the ID cards carefully before putting them in the Tyvek envelope along with the sample. One thing in particular that has to be correct is the date on the ID cards. The date on the ID card absolutely must match the date on the corresponding Form B or Form E. This date is the date the field work was done. The lab uses the date on the ID cards to fill out the lab forms. Your supervisor will contact you if you enter a date on the ID card that is different than the one on the Form B and/or the Form E. In general, the fieldwork dates are from the 25th of the month or the 24th to the 1st of the month. However, as sample fields near maturity, a final pre-harvest visit may need to be completed between survey periods. For example, if a final pre-harvest visit needs to be done on October 15th because the field is mature or the farmer intends to harvest the field very soon, then the date on the final Form B will be October 15th. The date on the ID cards for this sample must also be October 15th. In this case, please UPS the sample and ID cards to the lab ASAP, preferably on the same day or the next day. The completed Form B must be held until CAPI is available. When CAPI is available, the Form B should be submitted with the fieldwork date equal to October 15th. Also, the correct status code should be used. The stage of maturity for soybean units are determined independently of each other. So, during a normal visit, it is possible that one unit of a sample is mature, but the other unit is not. In this case, item 5 on the Form B for the mature unit is coded 5, and item 5 for the non-mature unit is coded 2, 3, or 4. Also, the status code for the mature unit is 4, and the status code for the non-mature unit is 1. Another visit will be needed when the other unit is mature. For the unit that was harvested earlier, all items on the Form B are blank except the status code, which is 10. For the unit that is now mature, item 5 on the Form B is coded 5 and the status code is 4. In this case, an ID card for each unit must be sent to the lab each time. For the visit where one unit is mature but the other is not mature yet, fill out the ID card for the mature unit as usual. For the non-mature unit, write a note on the ID card letting the lab know that the unit is not mature yet. The lab will hold the lab form until the other unit is received. For subsequent visits to harvest the other unit, 2 ID cards are required. Fill out an ID card for the mature unit as usual. Also, for the unit harvested previously, write a note on the ID card letting the lab know that they have already received the unit. The lab will then be able to complete the lab form.